Hello, this is Lindsay Boggs, and this is a tutorial for the Fight the Dragon ACK, or their Adventure Creation Kit. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you're going to notice when you download, let's turn this volume down just a bit. When you download the Fight the Dragon game, it may launch into a window. I've had it launch smaller than this, so we're going to go ahead and fix that right away. Select a character or create a new one. I believe if you are just starting with the program, you might need to create a character, and I'm not sure if there's a level requirement or not, but you definitely need a character to play through into the creation kit. So do that, and then go ahead and get this set up. So we're going to go to graphic settings, and then make sure that we have our full screen turned on, and then I just hit apply, and then I go to the highest setting that I possibly can, which on this computer it looks like it's just 1020 by 1080, which is exactly where it needs to be. The school computers go up into the 3000 something range, and it gets super tiny. Like this entire menu up here gets shrunken, and this one comes down to about that size. So if that happens to you, make sure that your menu is not going to be that small, because otherwise so too will the creation kit, and it's not optimal for working. But the 920 by 1080 should be fine. I'm just scrolling through here to see what other examples I might be able to show you. But yeah, stick with something that gives you a larger screen here and works with your computer. So once you get that set, go to create. Even if you already have been working in the editor, you're going to see this, so don't be concerned. I don't know, it's just for if you publish things, but you're going to start editing, and we have a blank area, so we can go ahead and get started. Or if you already have something, you can go to your adventures, and you can go load, and then anything with a white text is yours, and this beige color is the default stuff that comes with it. So, the first thing I like to do is save my scene, and I'd also like to make sure that that's okay. Okay, quick tip before we actually get started. Since this is a full screen and you actually can't exit this unless you quit the program, I hit the home key, and that allows me to break out, and if I wanted to, there's my new desktop thing, but if I had a paper map of some kind, I could pull it up, and I could be toggling back and forth to look at it. Or if you did have a dual monitor, that would be ideal, but if you don't, home key is your friend. Anywho, right, we're gonna save this level as a tutorial. So I'm gonna go up to design, and actually, before I get ahead of myself here, I should show you how to move around in here, and then we will save it, I promise. If you hold the middle mouse button and pan around, that's how you rotate. I shouldn't say pan. Hold the middle mouse button and drag. Okay? That's how you rotate this world. If you scroll the middle mouse button, you can zoom in and you can zoom out. Okay? So middle mouse, click and drag to rotate. Middle mouse, scroll to zoom. Click and hold with your right mouse button, and then go ahead and drag, and now we can pan. I'm not sure why these tools remind me of Maya, but they do. And they can be like working with tape at the beginning, where you just can't get the tape off your fingers, but eventually it gets easier to work with, and it will become second nature to you. So let's go ahead and drop some land. So I'm going to go back to where I was here. This is what you're going to see. This is your ribbon, I suppose. I'm not sure what you call it. It's your control ribbon. And you have a bunch of categories here with some undercategories beneath them. So in design, you'll see land, and we can click with our left mouse button, and we can just place tiles, or we can click and drag and set a rectangular marquee of tiles there. So that's placing land. You can place single items, or you can click with your left mouse and drag and release. And there's our marquee. If you click and drag but you don't release in time, it will eventually just phase out. So that's another thing, is that you do have to release within about 3/4 of a second, feels like. Otherwise it will just unselect what you've just dragged your mouse over. In order to save a level, you're going to need to put in a finishing point. So anytime you want to bring up that ribbon, it's the escape key, okay? So hit escape, and then we're going to go to Entities and Finish. And this is your finish point. Left click to place, escape to pull up the ribbon, and then we're going to save. So it's your adventures, save, and we shall name this tutorial. When you're naming your scenes, you don't really have a lot of characters to work with. So for example, how many characters do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 characters. So keep that in mind. Anyway, this is the tutorial, and it is now saved. Let us continue with the land examples. So we have our land here. If I hit Q, I can deselect any of these selected tiles here while hovering over them. But if I just double click on my Q key, it will disable all of them. So hotkeys are your friend. Anyway, if I want to edit my land, I need to think about the units that I'm going to be building in. So let me actually drag out some space here away from our start and finish points, so we can have some tutorial space. Okay, so at the top we have full, half, and quarter. First of all, the land is at quarter by default. It doesn't go any lower than this. Okay. If I want to raise a tile, first of all I've selected quarter, and I can click, and that will go up a quarter. If I select my half tool, I can click and it'll go up a half. We can select full, and it'll go up full. It's important for you to keep in mind the units that you're building with, as well as the difference between the units. So, for example, between the floor and this square here is a quarter. The difference between this tile and this tile is a quarter, because this one's standing at 0.25 and this one's standing at 0.5. So this one is at 1 full unit, and this one is at half a unit. So there's half a distance of space. And the reason this is important is because you can climb a full unit, but anything higher than that, which the very next tiny step higher would be a full and a quarter. So there you are. I'm going to show you what happens here. So test. And the quarter, we can just kind of run right over that. Comes up a little bit. Doesn't really slow us down too much. The half step is kind of like skipping a step if you're walking up the stairs, like in your house. That's what he looks like he's doing, to me anyway. A full block, which is this one, he has to actively hoist himself up there. And I'll do that one more time. A block and a quarter, or a unit and a quarter I should say, he can't get up there without some kind of assistance like a ladder. So, actually, become the slightest bit paranoid that this isn't working. Are we in full screen? Yes, okay. That would be quite tragic, so I had to interrupt this program to make sure that the technology is working appropriately. Alright, back to our tutorial. So, keep those units in mind when developing your level. It would be very sad to build out your entire terrain and discover that the player can't move because he's climbing over 1 unit blocks just to progress, unless that's what you intended, but be aware of your units and everything. Moving on. So, if I want to lower blocks, so we talked about raising blocks, Now, let's talk about lowering them. I'm gonna grab this. Okay, so I can click and drag to select tiles that already exist as well. It doesn't just have to be with placing them. Click and drag to select existing tiles. So I'm gonna go ahead and select these. And if I click on them, of course they will raise. Now if I hold shift and left click on them, they lower. Okay? So this is great for creating something like a house or a room. So for example, say I had something about this size. I raised it up 3 units. Now, here's the fun part. Click and drag and come across. So I just have this inner rectangle. Hold shift, left click, boom. So, double Q, oops, double Q, there you go. That's essentially a room. If I were to select these 3, drop them down, stick a door in it, call it good. Don't call it good, please work on it more. But yeah, you get the picture. So, the other cool thing is that you can select individual tiles by pressing E. So if I go up to quarter, and I select this tile, this tile, this tile, I'm gonna skip that one, ooh, maybe I've gotten myself in a pickle. Let's see, I want the corners for sure, and 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna extend this out just a second, make it look properly cool. Okay. Back to where we were. We would like these. Oops. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm pressing E to select and I'm pressing Q to deselect. As you just saw, I made a mistake over there. So E selects, Q deselects. And I'm going to go ahead and select tiles that I want. And I can go ahead and click. And all of those get raised up. Just the ones that I've selected. Now say I want more variation. Say I want, let's see. We're gonna ignore that one. And that one. Maybe that. Grab that one again. Just something a little less uniform. Okay? So, I don't know, just break up the lines a little bit. Maybe this is runes or something. It's not perfectly constructed, it's decaying. You know, make up a story. But, I think that's fun. Anyway, what else? Oh, the other thing that I've used this for, so like if you're gonna make your corners, I like to round my corners off a little bit with some height, like that. So I would just hold my E key even, and so if you hold E key, you can just select whatever you come across, double Q to deselect, and then I could just deselect those guys or just that one and, you know, call it good. Anyway, so that's raising and lowering. We talked about that. Let's move on to, yeah, let's go over this really quick. I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, we didn't talk about deleting, perfect. So, if I click and drag and select, this might build land, okay. Click and drag will select land most of the time. Sometimes it will build land. So it kind of depends on where your selection starts, as well as like what the ratio is. So, let me get out of here real quick. I'm selecting a piece that I already have built, extending it up, and that allows me to select. If I were to go all the way out there, oh no, it's not gonna, good, okay, cool. Start with something you already have, and you'll get a selection. If you start out here and come this direction, it builds more land. So keep that in mind, it is context sensitive. If you hit the control key and then click, just hold down control and left click, it will delete it. So I can delete individual blocks, hold control, left click, hold control, left click, okay? Or I could make a selection, hold control, left click, and it would be gone. Alright, there's different kinds of land. So if I hit the tab key, I'm able to access these different textures here. So this interface, you have design, and then everything beneath it, and then these things may also have variants. Same thing with like props, all of these different subcategories, and then the things within them may have variants. So this interface is very branching. I don't know if you ever get lost, just hit the escape key. So design, land, tab. Tab is for this little bottom tray down here. And we can pick a new texture. So what I want to talk to you guys about, or advise you on, is that you can only have a certain number of tiles that are of a certain texture. I'm going to use my snow as an example. So here's this snowgrass texture, okay? If I click and drag out, it gives me snowgrass tiles. I have zero control over where this grass is located, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, what I want to tell you is it says here tiles 864 of 13 and 50 max of this current paint. Okay, so these tiles are all painted with the snow and grass texture, and if I go ahead and get my 1350 the max tiles, almost there. There we are. Okay, could not add all tiles because the max count has been reached. That's an important thing to note when you're planning out your levels. But what you can do is kind of, I would say, work the system. You can finagle your way around this. So I have a hypothesis for how these textures work. I'm not 100% sure that I'm right, but I know how to fix it, and that's the important thing. So we cannot drop any more land out here, okay? There's another function within this, like anything now that I click on, I'm in design land, is going to create land. But I could go escape, design, paint. And now I'm gonna grab my snow and dirt texture to make a point, and then I'm gonna show you how to fix it. Here's my snow dirt texture. Now, the reason why I believe that these textures, oh, I didn't even explain it yet, did I? Sorry, getting ahead of myself. These textures, you cannot control where the grass shows up and where it doesn't, okay? As you can see, it's clearly a tiling texture. And I believe that these tiles are predestined to contain a certain texture, and then you simply reveal or hide the textures based on your paint tool. That's how I think it works. Because if you look here, it says position. 8 is my x coordinate, I would presume, and then 17 in the y, just like a grid. And I think that like this square at position -18, 9 is always going to look exactly like that. And this square at position -14, 10 is always going to be pure white if you have a snow texture on it, or, you know, and this is why. So right now this is snow and grass. I'm gonna paint snow and dirt over it. Watch what happens. Okay, so I click and drag, and then you click again to apply it. Okay, click and drag, click again to apply it. If I were to grab this entire thing, click and drag, click to apply it. Oops. Shush. Go down here. Look at that. It's all exactly on top of each other because these textures are like twins, so to speak. And I just got done doing a level which was pretty much all snow, and I painted it. And I ran into this issue where I would run out of textures to use. I also have this pure snow texture down here. Okay. Pure snow is pure snow. So if you look at these, and I can't fix this problem for every texture that you run out of because they're not all contained like this, where they have other textures that are so similar to them or actually contain that texture within itself. So like, clearly, if these blocks here are the snow and dirt texture, it literally contains the snow texture inside of it. It just has these blotches of dirt on top of it. But the grass and dirt textures are very similar. So this is how I worked around it. I'm going to go ahead and paint it all with grass again. Yes, I know. I keep hitting the tab key instead of the Q key. Okay. Just make sure it's all painted for tutorial's sake. Okay. Did we get them all? That one looks pretty decent. Okay, there we go. Right then. So, if I also, so I could go escape, design, land, and then I could start building with tab, whatever texture I wanted, or I could have hit right click on it and get to a context sensitive menu, as it says there. So I could go back to paint from here, or I could right click on here and switch back to sculpt. Which is very useful. So right click gives a lot of context sensitivity. It is certainly not perfect, but it's nice to have for the sake of speed. So I would like to be in sculpt mode and show that I cannot, well, looks like I still have some tiles in there. Let's make sure that we're at capacity for this to prove a point. Okay. We cannot add any more of the snow and grass texture. But what we're going to do is pick a texture that we don't anticipate using a lot of. Say, I really don't want to use the snow and dirt texture that much, so I don't mind using its categorization from paint. I'd rather preserve that for snow. So we're going to go ahead and switch to paint. Also, when you right click and switch to paint, you will automatically adopt the texture that you clicked on. So right now I'm in snow and dirt in the sculpt mode. Right click, switch to paint is going to bring me to snow and grass. Okay, so be aware of that. I can hit tab and grab my snow and dirt, which I need. Okay, anyway, I'm in paint mode. So, like I'd said before, all of these areas here are destined to be white, regardless of whether they're snow and grass, or snow and dirt. So if I click and drag, and it is pretty hard to see a selection in the snow, click on it again to apply it, okay, you can see that I'm not getting any dirt here, which further proves my point about these textures being predetermined based on world space. But if I go ahead and paint all of these white spaces with my snow and dirt texture, just not where the grass is showing, then no dirt will show up, and I will have removed tiles from my snow and grass categorization. Thereby, I can continue to make tiles with snow and grass because my capacity will no longer be at its limit. So, now, if I hit right click and I switch to sculpt, and I grab my snow and grass block, which I previously was able to place 0 more of them, I can start to build more snow and grass blocks because I painted the snow colored, and it is a marvelous thing to do. So that's a tip. I would be would be surprised if you didn't have this issue, but they are improving this game. I watched a couple of tutorials from previous students, and what I had noticed was one student was limited to 6,000 building points, and the other student was limited to 8,000. So clearly I have 10,000 to work with, so that's nice to think about, that our limitations are continuously becoming less and less. So by the time you watch this tutorial, maybe you will have 12,000, who knows? And maybe this problem will be solved. But there you have it, in case you do need to solve it. Okay. Let's see. What else was I going to talk to you about in here? Okay, so let's talk about building points for a second, since we brought that up. Each square tile costs 1 building point. Okay, simple enough. But these things add up very quickly. The nice thing is that no matter how high you build your terrain, that does not affect building points. Okay? So you don't need to worry about that. It's just like the actual tile itself. Big or small, they all just score 1. Anyway, you need to think about your level costs. Like each asset that goes into your level is going to add into that. So that will help us segue into the next section, which is items. Let's grab, oh, I don't know, something fun. Something where you can see the units. This mossy stone. Okay, cool. And since I built it with full, that's why it's already coming taller than my starting thing here. And I can't shrink it down with shift click to shrink it. If I move to half, I could shrink it by half. Shift click. Okay. Oh, maybe it is half. Thought that was a quarter. Anyway, I guess half is the default height. Or the minimum height, I should say. Double Q to let go of that. Alright. So, what we're going to talk about, hit the escape key, land, blue and all that stuff. We'll get there in a bit. We want to talk about props first. So there's multiple kinds of props. Interactive, of course, they're, in my opinion, the most fun. But we're going to start with doors, actually. That's going to bring us into code. Destructible chests, static bridges. Okay. This is my promise to you. We will go through interactive props and destructible props. And these things last. Because I'm trying to keep this as linear as possible. So let's go ahead and talk about destructible items first. These are very basic. You have crates. They have you can see their cost here. So like you have your building points. Either crate, there's only 2 variants right now, will cost you 5 points. When you smash them, you will get a bomb, or you will get maybe some gold or some potions, or you have absolutely 0 control over what goes into the crate. So it's just a mystery box. So those are those 2 things, and then related to them are vases. You got a few more options here. They also have a cost of 5, and they will also spawn bombs or potions. So something to keep in mind. And then if you want to remove an item, it's just hold control and left click, same way that you would delete a tile like we did before. You do need to be in the correct mode to delete an object. So right now I'm in static prop mode, or I'm not in static prop mode, I am in destructible prop mode. I can't delete the train right now, okay? I can't select the train. I need to be in land mode or paint mode to select terrain, and I need to be in land mode specifically to delete it. So that might be a bit of a learning curve in your first couple hours in this editor, but you will pick up on it very quickly, I'm sure, after a bit of frustration like I had. Anyway, also tab, like I said before, brings us up. Now we're going to talk about this destroy thing, and this is pretty special. So we have a breakable wall, which is based on events, which is based on code. And not code like you write, but the Fight the Dragon ACK has something that they call logic, and it's essentially pink strings of light that tie objects together and tell them how to relate to one another. And It's a lot of fun, actually, and we're going to talk a lot about it. So, we'll talk about events, but first, the basics. This cracked wall. So, I'm going to grab my land. I'm going to raise this up a couple units. Is this accurate? Let's check. It is. Good. Okay, so 1 block is 1 unit, just for our sake of going through this. Escape. Props. Destructible tab. Destroy. Cracked wall. Click. Click to place, of course. The cracked wall cannot be placed on the floor. It must be placed on an elevated surface. So, worth noting. Escape. Okay. Play test. And here we go. So, I'm going to switch my weapons, actually. And if I hit this, I will be able to break it. Of course, you can't break down any other bit of the wall, just the stuff that we just put that cracked wall on. Great for secrets and maybe blockades, other kinds of things. Slow your player down. Or, like I said, secret spots. The other kind of wall is based on an event, and without getting too far into code, I just want to show you what that looks like. So, let's go props, destructible tab, breakable wall. And it will tell you, by the way, so this breakable wall, right down here, this tooltip, event based only, or this cracked wall, cracked wall, place a tile to be able to destroy the wall. I should say place on an elevated tile because it can't place it on the ground, but tomato, tomato. Okay, so here's our breakable wall with an event. Okay, they look very similar, but if you hover over them, you can see the name. So breakable wall of type destroy in the destructible category, which is nice. They tell you where to find it, because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to retrace your steps through this branching categories. And then this is a cracked wall. So if you can find it, you can figure out how to use it again. So right now we don't have an event to destroy this wall with. We can't just go up and smash it with a sword. So we're going to create something for the player to interact with that they may not even be aware of. So in logic, we're just going to set up a trigger, okay? And we will set this trigger right next to our block here, okay? And we click the trigger to edit it, events, and we're going to do an on trigger enter. Okay, so this event picker is something that you're going to need to get familiar with. It is with, I believe, every piece of... no, it's not. That's a lie. It is with every piece of, like, logic item that is not a teleporter. There might be a few more exceptions. But anyway, you could find an item in the scene, which I recommend, okay? Or you could scroll through this list and select. I recommend clicking find item in scene because you cannot name items in this editor. Or at least you can't name all items, and it gets pretty, what's the word? Difficult to read very quickly. So if we click find item in scene, they have fixed that issue by giving us these lovely spinning pink boxes above any item that can be selected, except a trigger cannot select itself, and it shall tell you cannot connect to self, exclamation point. But once you've selected an item, if I click it, it's going to give me this little sub box over here. What would you like to do with this breakable wall? Well, I would like to break it, and this fires once is super redundant because there's no way to reconstruct a breakable wall. So anyway, add to list, and so that will happen on trigger enter. Okay, we will break this wall. As you noticed, we could have also grabbed this breakable wall that the player could break, and we could break that in code as well if we chose to. So let's go ahead and do that, and see it says cracked wall, so that's one nice thing. Now also take note that these two, I'm going to hit find item in scene real quick. We've selected these items, so now their boxes have decreased in size by about 75%. So any item that is already connected, you get a string that connects it to what it's firing, what logic object, whether it's a trigger or logic block or whatever, and then they shrink. So it's nice to see visually what chains are being made here. Let's get out of here. That's all set, and I will playtest it. Okay. We already smashed that before, so you can see that we cannot. Well, we would be able to break that. Oops. Goodness, wrong button. Okay. This is the one that we're going to break in an event by walking into this trigger. You can see that I cannot smash it on my own. I could smash that one though, but both of these are reachable in code. So we enter our trigger and it goes ba-bam, ba-bam. Ready? Go. Okay. Cool. So that's important to note. You can do so many cool things in this editor with code. Well, I have a hard time calling it with the pink strings. Okay. So, that was just breakable objects. So before I derail my train and go teach you code, I need to go back to objects and stay focused. Okay. Bases, crates, and destructible objects. We talked about all of those. So escape. And now we shall talk about static objects. Static objects are purely for set design. They are pretty expensive when it comes to, well, not expensive, but you need to get all of your code things in first and make your level functional before you start decorating it. How much was it's worth noting. Destructible, 25 points for a breakable wall or for a destructible wall. Okay, so if you have a level that depends on a breakable wall or a destructible wall, make sure you get that into your level first before you start decorating. Otherwise, you won't have enough left over to get your functionality done. Always watch this number like it's a heartbeat. Okay. What was I talking about? Static props, decorations, shiny things, crystals. So that is under escape, props, static, tab, and we have all these categories. Won't need to go through all of them, but just look at all the things that you can do. They have anvils and brick piles, and okay, so you also have different like variations of things. So this snow patch is perfect. If I click on it, you can see that any snow patch is going to cost me 4 building points, but this snow patch has 3 variations. So I click on it, and I am not just stuck with that one measly snow patch for my entire level. No, I can click on it, and it says I'm hovering over it right now, and it says variation 1 of 3. So I click on it, 2 of 3, or I click on it again, and that's 3 of 3. Click on it one more time, we return to 1. An important thing to understand about this editor is that each tile can only possess one object. It can be overlapped by any number of objects, but it can only support, I don't want to say support, can only possess for itself a single object. So this snow tile, I just deleted it with control left click, belongs to this tile. It may overlap others when I have it here, but it belongs to this middle tile. Okay, same thing with this variation 3. It's overlapping it, but it belongs to this. So I could still place objects here, okay, because there's nothing technically on that tile. It's just being covered up a bit. But I can't place anything else on top of this snow. Okay, I can't take that crystal and stick it here. I can't take a barrel and put it here because this space is occupied by a snow pile. What you could do, if you really wanted to have crystals sticking out of the snow, is number 1, make a snow texture and stick it on the tile. But you could put this variant 2 and have it stretch over there, or variant 3, maybe put something over here where it, kind of surrounds it. But now we're getting into expensive costs because these are 4 points each. If I remember from that little, yeah, they're 4 points each. So just bear that in mind. Every tile can only have 1 item. Now, we talked about variance. It's a good idea to check and make sure that you have props available to you to tell your story. Otherwise, you can kind of, work your way around it. But if you can make those things align as much as possible, it is a very good idea. So, what else? You need to be careful on the collision on some of these things. Like, their collision is appropriately set, but for example, I had this happen to me. Let's see if I can replicate it. I had a statue, it was this statue, and I set it there, and I had it might have been a little lower than that, but we're gonna just try it. I had this statue set up against a wall, and I was able to, like, press myself up here and then get up onto this wall somehow, in my other level. So much so that I had to move the statue away from it. I must have had other conditions going on, with my terrain, but do keep in mind and do play test for that, because it was a repeatable bug on multiple computers, so I moved everything away from the wall. But just take care with the way that things are placed, and if it works like that and it's fine, then go for it, but test it, please. Next thing on the list, props. Back to static, make sure that there's nothing else that needs to be said about this. Actually, yeah, I have a point to make. So, a couple of points. Here I have a normal rock, okay? This costs 3 building points. The snow-covered rock costs 4, okay? So, keep that in mind. But now, I want you to look at the trees. The trees, so a regular spruce is 5, a snow-covered spruce is 5, a pine is 5, a snow pine is 5. So they're not always more expensive, which is fine, but be aware. NPCs, small tangent, bear with me. NPCs are 0 points. Look at this, 407 of 10,000, okay? NPC, 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 NPC. Still 407 of 10,000, which is great. I think it's a little bit funny that my rock costs 5, but I can have human beings and they don't cost anything. But you can use them for code and everything else, which is really what makes the game fun, because you can do more things in it. But NPCs are 0 cost, so use NPCs. You don't need to be stingy with them. Make them have a purpose, of course, but anyway. Okay, coming back from that tangent. Exterior things, crystals, decorations, hanging. Oh, lights. Okay, lights are special. So you can turn them on and off in code, so they are capable of interacting with logical things. And I believe of these items, they are the only ones that have logic attached to them that isn't, like, directly obvious. So let's grab a campfire, and we will also grab a sconce and put that on a wall. Also, so if you noticed, it was originally overlapping that breakable wall there. I could click it and place it and it would sit there. But if I want it to not look like that, I could hit my Q and E keys to rotate it, or I could also use my arrow keys. And then I could use my up arrow key and my down arrow key to adjust its height on the wall. So, one more time, left and right arrow keys, or Q and E, and then of course up and down to adjust the height. Unfortunately, W and S do not adjust the height, but not a big issue. Anyway, lights. So let us grab another trigger for testing purposes. So logic trigger. And we shall set this in front of the blue crystal. Click on it, events, on trigger, enter. We're going to find these objects. So our campfire, we're going to toggle it, okay? And then we're going to find another object and grab that sconce and toggle that as well. I like to set things to a certain value on game start, and I will show you how to do that when we get into the code section. So I would know what I'm toggling. I wouldn't just trust that it was on or off, even though all lights that I've experienced have begun in the on position. So we have our campfire and our sconce, and then if we enter this trigger, we can turn them off, and if we were to come back and do it again, they would turn back on. This is really cool for if you transition into nighttime or daytime and you want, you know, things lit at night and put away during the day, or vice versa. It's also cool to like walk by and have the player walk through a trigger and have the, you know, the fire light up. All kinds of cool stuff. You can use it for feedback. I used it to show them that they had unlocked a gate that they were too far away to hear the sound from, and there wasn't an audio file that matched for a gate, and I wasn't satisfied with it. So that was my reasoning for giving them like this trail of torches that showed them, yes, you did, you unlocked it, good job, instead of just like, what did I do? So, anywho, that's lights. Next on the list, props, static bridges. Okay, so for this section, let's just go over here. We'll grab some more land, so design land. Give ourselves another section, double Q to deselect, and I'm gonna grab, that'll be good for one example, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually don't want them to be perfect. So I want to show you something. That'll do. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. So, escape, and props, and bridges. So, now that I am in my bridge mode, as you can already see as I'm hovering over, it's giving me a preview of where that bridge will go. Since this is longer, it will go extend for a number of tiles and then stop. But it will automatically find something in front of it, you know, a tile of course, and connect with it. But if I put it on here, it is automatically set to the top height. No matter what, you cannot adjust the height of a bridge, which I think is a little bit of a downer, because there could be so many more cool things if you could adjust the height of a bridge. But, you know, it's okay. So if I were to set that bridge there, it's going to overshoot it. Same thing, it's automatically going to as tall as that piece can go. But if I were to rotate it, it would connect with the first thing that came in front of it. You can stand on bridges, you can run across them, and you can also run underneath them. I'm not sure that that's set to tall enough. We may find out. What I'm going to do is just make sure that it is. So I'm going to use my eyedrop tool. I'm going to select, well, not eyedrop, sorry. I don't know why I did that. I'm still in sculpt mode. So sculpt mode or land mode, whatever you want to call it, same thing. Going to select that section, and then holding E, I will just hover over while holding E to select all of those. And I just want to boost it up because I want to make sure that I can pass underneath it. And then we're going to jump in and playtest. So escape, playtest. When you walk under a bridge, your camera will ignore the tiles so that you can still see where you're going, which is awesome. And as you saw, the bridge stayed with our tiles as we raised them. So it is still just a quarter distance below the top of our tile there. Escape back to editor. And there are obviously different textures and things for bridges, just like in land. Tab, and you could pick any of those textures that you wanted. I like the ice bridge a lot, actually. I think it's pretty cool. They have 2 ice bridges. Anyway, and then of course, since we're in bridge mode, we can control click to delete them if we choose. Next on the list, steps. To be honest with you, I really don't care for steps. I'd rather build them out, but they have their purpose, I'm sure. Just like the bridge, they automatically connect to the top of your block, and they self-calculate how to get down. So they bring it to the lowest level here, and place themselves. They just kind of float in the air. I do believe, yeah, you have to place it on an elevated surface. You can't, place it on the floor. And then also, as I'd said, each tile can only contain 1 object. So I cannot place another set of stairs on the exact opposite side of this tile. Okay, it is limited to 1 object. I also cannot place a light on this tile, or a wall banner, or anything else. This tile is occupied by the stair set, and that's it. Okay, so keep that in mind when you are building your levels. So let's see here. Next on the list, not that list, bridges, steps, decals. Decals are a lot of fun. Decals also have code attached to them. There's decals that go on the wall, and there's decals that go on the floor. And they have different variations and cool things you can do with them. So of course there's blood, and you could put some blood under the bridge, like the troll ate them, I don't know. Decals can be rotated, so it doesn't look like the same pattern over and over again. You can rotate them with your Q and E keys. You can rotate any object, well, most any object, with your Q and E keys, just by hovering over it and hitting Q and E. If you click on it, it says variation 1 of 4, one of, you know, n number of variations. It will cycle through, and you could have, you know, whatever you wanted. Now I'm going to, let's put a wall glyph up, just for argument's sake. Put it here. I can use my up and down arrow. Oops, goodness. Up and down arrows to switch where I want that. Maybe I want that to be red. Spooky. Okay, so haven't saved in a while. I'm gonna hit Control S, and that is going to quick save my tutorial. I could also have gone to escape your adventures, save, and get the saving tutorial thing. Anyway, back to decals. If I once again set up a trigger, logic triggers, we shall set this one here, and events on trigger enter, find item and scene. We will find this decal, and we could turn it off, or we could toggle it, and we could also decide if it fires once or multiple times. So I think you got the concept of turning things on and off with the lights, so let's have some fun here. So this decal, we are going to turn it off, okay? And once you turn something on or off, this, actually I was about to say something, it wasn't going to be correct. Okay, one step at a time, on and off, okay? We're going to turn off that decal. This one, first of all, trigger, event on enter, find item and scene, that decal, we will toggle it, okay? And the other one is going to be a toggle, event trigger, enter, find item and scene. this one, toggle, but we're going to make it fire once, okay? So we can see here. And this is where I said before, things get awfully hard to read when they're all labeled blood and you can't rename them. I mean, they're all hooked up. You can see their little boxes are shrunken and the lines are connected. But you need to be aware of what you're doing. So, we're turning the front one off. We're going to toggle the middle one, and the last one we're going to toggle once, okay? So, go ahead and play test. First of all, let's run through and look at them. Okay, very spooky. Now, we're going to enter this trigger. This one's going to turn off, that one's going to toggle, and that one's going to toggle once. So they're all going to look like they shut off for a second. Okay? Boom. Oh, the blood is gone. Now, when I enter this trigger, the one that we set to toggle will turn back on, and the one that I set to toggle once will not, because that code has already been called. So, here we are with just our one toggling item, because we've already done the other one once. There we are. Okay, so a little bit of segue into this code stuff and how it works. Can I? Are we done? Decals, spawners. We'll come back and talk about spawners because I want to talk about enemies first. Okay, code. Let's talk about, okay. Logic. You've seen the trigger. You are now familiar with it. This trigger, well, any trigger, but this one specifically, can be the only object occupying that tile. So yes, logic objects do also count as that one occupying space. For example, this tile has a decal on it, which means it's already occupied by an object, so I can't place a trigger on this object. So no matter how many times I click, I can't place anything else on that object. Not a light, not a banner, not a nothing. Same thing, I can't put a rock inside this trigger or anything. Everything only gets one object per tile. But say I want, oh, and by the way, this decal is also taking up this space. But I really want something to happen between these, or as soon as the player enters this threshold, but I want that blood to be right there, and I don't want it to occur before they come up here. I want them to be right here. So what I'm going to do is place the trigger right there. Okay. Now I can click on it, and I can expand it, and I'm going to expand it in the depth as well. So the nice thing is, like, width, depth, and height are all color-coded, so you get your red, your green, your blue. The only downside is that they go up in, well, height is by default too, but width and depth go up in increments of 2 because they keep things equal, you know, on both sides. But now that trigger is right there, and if I have an on trigger enter, then I'm golden, okay? And maybe there's no land over here. They have to pass through here. So that's triggers. They have on trigger enter and on trigger exit. They can also affect the environment just naturally within, like, themselves, which are self-contained, which is interesting because you can also have, like, an environment node and do that as well. They have this music track. I have not had success with this. I tried it, but I don't know, maybe by the time you work with this it'll be fixed. Environment, I could change, you know, snow, dust, cloud, leaves, affect the intensity. I could change the time of day by setting it forward or backwards, which actually just affects the way that the directional light rotates in the scene, and of course color and all of that. But yeah, so if I wanted to make it, like, really obvious, make it like rain at night, a lot of rain, when I enter that would be fine. And for events, I could say on enter I'm going to grab all of these pieces of blood here and turn them on. Okay, regardless of what has happened to them before, I'm turning on all of the blood. And on trigger exit, I will turn off this one, just the middle one. Okay, so we can go ahead and play test. So here we are. Also, when we go through that big trigger, the day-night cycle, everything's going to change. So let's just chase away a couple of shadows quick so we can see that effect. Enter here and do our blood thing. So all the blood is off. Just that one toggles back. And let's make sure that it's off, because when we enter, all the blood's going to come back. And that's creepy. Okay, our directional light rotates, brings us to night. Rain comes to heavy. Our trigger should only come to about this line or this line. So when we exit, all of this blood goes away. Or excuse me, just the middle one goes away. That's right. So on enter, we turn them all on. On exit, the middle one comes off. Okay? And then we can continue to affect things in code over here by toggling this one. Now remember, the code for this back side, doesn't count if I walk through the trigger. This last piece of blood over here is that it only fires once. So that's why that one is not updating, even though it's on and we originally turned it off once. That code is already fired, so we don't have any other code telling it to turn off. Okay. So that's triggers. They're very fun. They're great for testing. And now we get to talk about blockers for a minute. Blockers are just shadows. So if you play test real quick, see all of this black around this vignette kind of a thing that we're getting. It's not a vignette, it's actual like shadows that slowly open up our level to us, and then if we go back, they're not there anymore. So oops, I forgot about that trigger that destroyed the wall. Anyway, yeah, they're shadows. They're great to show the player where they've already been. It's like, oh, I've already been through this way. This area has been revealed to me. And there's no way to get rid of the default shadows, unfortunately. But you can install shadows where you might like to. So for example, if you had a building, okay, I try to keep my stuff pretty far away, but you can still see it, especially as levels get bigger and you chase away more shadows. You can see quite a distance off the board. So that's why these blockers are here. I count 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll place a piece of land right there. And that's where I'm going to put my blocker, because everything needs a piece of land to stand on. So I'm going to go logic, blocker, okay. That looks like a dark little trigger box. But it's shadows, so I could expand it in the X and the height. There's no reason to really expand it like that unless you find that you can see this piece of land. But go easy on it. This is excessive. Don't do that. Okay, that's fine. I could use my context-sensitive menu to right-click and go switch to sculpt, and I'm back in the game without even going into my ribbon and everything else. So, behind this wall, I'm gonna build myself a house, or a room of some kind, who knows. Okay? Big thing here. And I'm going to go like this, hold shift and click to lower. Okay, now I have this structure of some kind. Oh, fun opportunity for a lesson. You can also copy and paste in this editor. So if I click and hold and drag, I've selected it, okay? Right click, copy. Now, I'm going to paste this. How far away do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we'll try and get it close. Sometimes it's hard to see. Paste it over here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I should be able to see that. I hope. Let's go ahead and play test. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. As the level, like I'd said, gets bigger, you kind of get a better field of view. Maybe I should put a little bit closer to prove my point. I think I shall. Okay. Or I could do this. Okay. I'm gonna prove my point in a different way. Test. So now suppose we go over here. Okay. We're in this house right now, okay? Or this little thing. But we can still see everything that's going on over there. If we were to come over here, now we can clearly see from the edge here, what is going on. And maybe we don't want that. Maybe we're using teleporters to get in there. So before we get into teleporters and all of that, I'm just going to quickly use this. Do believe props interactive, which we still need to go back to. Teleport. Just grab these guys, grab my land, and delete it. Okay. And then we're going to, oops. See, now this says rename prop. Some of them do have this, so we'll, goodness. Everything gets changed to caps anyway. Oh, but it's literally naming it in the viewport, or in the... Is that going to show up in the thing? No. Huh. Well, that would be very nice. If that worked for all props, but it doesn't. Anyway, 1 second here. Just hook these up. Okay, we are focusing on the blockers, remember, the shadows. We'll get into all of this fancy dancy stuff in a second. So, here's my teleporter. I have to use it. Okay. I run around this house and I can see things over there that I don't want to see. I want this to be separate. That's where that blocker comes into play. So, if I grab, we'll use circle teleporters. Okay. Alright, now, oh, we can still see a little bit, can't we? But it's better than the other one, so we might need to move this away. Oh, I know why. Because we're at the very edge of the blocker. We would need another blocker right there. But, they are meant to prevent the player from seeing all the way across the aisle, or, you know, out of space. Like they could with this one. You can see the difference there. So, that is blockers. That's all they do. You can still chase them away. If you had land going through there, it would chase away like normal shadows, but it just helps to have them in a non-player accessible area. The player will never touch this, and then it would block it. And this edge right here was why we could see through, so we'd need to create another one, or, you know, one going that direction. So, Next, logic switches. Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab entity spawn point. There can only be one spawn point in the level. But we're going to come over here so we can talk about switches. So, right click, switch to sculpt. Switches are an interactive prop, and okay. What's on my list here? Switches, notifications, yeah. Have to think about this. Alright, switches and interactive props go hand in hand, so we're going to cover these things together. Props, interactive, so anything the player can interact with, tab. Okay, we're going to go to switch for now, and we have levers and pressure plates. Both of them have a build cost of 5. So let's go ahead and do a pressure plate. Okay, so we're just going to drop that in. Yes, we can rotate it. And we need something to set on top of it. So we hit tab and we go to our movable section. And there's all these kinds of barrels that we can have. Fish barrels and wine barrels and fruit and all that stuff. We'll take the fish and just set it there for tutorial purposes. Now, just setting a barrel on a plate is not going to do anything. We need something to interact with, hence the interactable items. We have doors and gates and keys, and we could also interact with any of these logic items, so the decals and the fire and all of this cool stuff can be messed with with logic things. Some things are limited. I would wonder if that would be active with a switch, but you can. And if you can't, you definitely can with a logic block, which you can finagle your way around. So don't tempt me. I might. Okay. Anyway. Gate. We'll grab this gate, and we shall set it there. Gates are shut by default. You can't go through them. You need to have a switch to open a gate. So, very basic here. We have our pressure plate, our barrel, and that. So, we need to be able to interact with this. Click on the pressure plate, add new connection, click on this gate, okay? That's it. So when this is on, excuse me, gate has all on, and that's what the pressure plate goes to. So, you can see it reflected here as well. So here's the gate telling us our switch is a pressure plate on opened, so that will open it. We don't have any, we could fire other code. We could set things invisible and turn things on and off and do whatever we want. If we wanted to, but we don't need to. Say all we want to do is open this gate. So we'll go ahead and play test. Okay, if I stand on it, it will also open. So unless you want your player to be able to like run under it like that, it needs to be far enough away from your player, unless they're supposed to get into this area and then not be able to come back, which could be a thing. But if you want them to be able to open that, it will set the barrel on it. Okay, and then removing the barrel will take that off. Back to the editor. Let's grab interactive tab. Switch plates. I'm wondering if, I'm pretty sure that a object can only contain 3 connections. Okay. Yep. Okay. Prop cannot have more than 3 connections. That would be any prop. So I'm just going to control click that so it doesn't, hey. Oh, I was in the picker mode. Okay. Let's go right click. No, let's not do that. Hit tab, movable. We'll grab ourselves a fruit barrel and a wine barrel for fun. When we have all 3 of those on, hit play. It will open our gate and not before. Okay. There we are. We could remove any of them. Oops, goodness. And it would go away. Okay. You get the idea. Switches work in the exact same way as a pressure plate. So props, interactive, tab, switch. Here's a lever. You can place it on the floor, but you can't use it when it's down there, and I don't know why that's even a thing. So I just deleted it. You should put it on a wall over here and then rotate it so you can see it. There we go. I'm going to delete one pressure plate and a barrel, because like I said, we can only have 3 things here. So we're going to connect that to here, and we will look at this again. Play test. Barrel. There. Pick up barrel. Okay. And the gate can open if we take this off. Okay, so all of these connections need to be met. There is another function. So if I were to props interactive, okay, I can click on this. See how this says all on? That means I need all of these things to be on in order for this gate to open. It has 3 requirements. Now, what if it wasn't an and condition? I don't even call it whatever. All off. Okay, so that means it would start with this all off. Should be open on game start since it's already all off, and it is. Now, let me get back to my looking at this. Any on. Okay, so we have all on, all off, or any of them on. We don't have an any off though. Just interesting. Anyway, any on. So any one of these things is going to open the gate, no matter what. So if I were to go and pull the switch, boom. Even though there's nothing going on with these plates over here. So it looks pretty versatile this way, as far as what you can do with it. But there's an even better way. So this manner of hooking up logic items is becoming outdated, specifically switch items. There is a new way, which brings me to logic switch. This is a special kind of a logic block. It's green, and it handles the inputs and the pass-fail conditions. So we don't need to hook this up directly to the object. We hook it up to this, and then we hook that to the gate. So it's kind of this middleman. So I wonder, switch to interactive prop. That was my right-click context sensitive. We can, I wonder. Yeah, it totally could connect to both of them, but we don't want to do that. That would be in poor taste. So we're going to get rid of the gate connection and grab this logic node. Okay, so logic block. Oh, I could rename it too. That's nice. Looks like that's popping up in more places. Logic switch. Okay. Now, rather than any on, or all off, I can dictate exactly what I want to happen. If I want just that one to be on and those two to be off, or if I want all of them to be off, which was not an option with the last hooking up thing, I could, yeah, whatever I want. And it's color-coded. So here our switch begins in a red state, which is off. When you pull the lever, like pull the lever, crunk, then it is on and it turns to green. Okay, so pulling it down will turn it to green, and fire this notification, or this section of it, as true or on. And then of course the strings update as well, so I can tell I want that one off, and that one off, and I want that on. Okay? But let's do this. Let's do 2 of them on. Okay, so these 2 plates, or excuse me, a plate and a switch, and the left plate will be off. And then on pass conditions, I'm going to find an object in the scene, and we will open this gate. And then on a failed condition, find an object in a scene, we can close this gate. Add to list. Okay. So, off, on. We shall play test. And this is great for puzzles because their first instinct would be like, oh, 2 barrels, 2 pressure plates, and a switch. I got this. No. That is not the correct combination of things to do here. I'm gonna pick up this barrel, and then it's good to go. Any other combination of things would not do the trick. Okay. You can see how this can become pretty fun. Back to the editor. Let's see, what have we not gone over? Logic switch, notifications, those are easy. So they, like I said, everything occupies a space, so try and keep them in areas where you might not be using, such as like on top of a wall that doesn't have a light or a banner on it. So if you had like walls that were 2 blocks thick, I'd put it in the back one, so that you could use the front ones for decorations and stuff. But for practice, we're gonna have a notification there, and we'll have it be green in the background for 3 seconds, and we're gonna say open sesame, and then we shall have a second one, and this one will be red, and it shall say I don't know, something funny. Not a clue. Okay, so when we're firing these things, okay, let me just show you. We're gonna go logic switch, we're gonna hook it up. So on past, we're gonna grab this one, we're gonna fire the notification. Like that blood decal where we only had it interacting with the code at one instance, we could have this fire just once, which might be a good thing to do for just the win condition. And then on failed, maybe we want this one to do it every time. Okay, so we've got that notification firing. Now we can go ahead and play test once again. So it automatically fires as false because this condition has passed as false at the very start of the game. What I could do is enable and disable that. Why are you showing in the editor? Pink strings should not be showing in the editor. That is an error. If we play test again, that should go away. And it's not. Okay, so sometimes some interesting things happen. Decals also have a tendency to like go on the fritz and not show appropriately. Oh, these are fine. And what I've done is either exit the level or like go back out of the ACK, or restart the program. But it shouldn't affect our functionality. So I'm sorry, that really bothered me. But anyway, that one has to be off. This one is on, and then this one gets turned on, and then we should have our win condition come in. So pull lever, open sesame. That should only happen once, okay? So as soon as we fail again, we should get our red notification. Not a clue, but we can open it again, but since we're only firing that thing once, it doesn't say open sesame again. So just a little bit of reinforcement there with that fires once, and the way that all of these things talk to each other. Logic. that pretty much covers it for the switches. These logic blocks as well can only take 3 inputs, but you could, here's the next fun thing, you know, don't break it or make it impossible by bringing it to the same items and making it a different combination, because that would not be good. But say a logic switch over here, and I'm going to handle 2 inputs. We'll grab a props interactive tab. Do I want to make him switches? Sure, switches are easier than pressure plates, just a single item. Oops, that's not a switch. That's the light that we had from before. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that so I can use this wall. And place 2 more switches, okay? And I'm going to connect them to this logic node, okay? And then oops, goodness gracious. I have to go escape, logic switch, click. I want that left one to be off. So, in other words, I want the middle one to be off. Okay, and I want to have to pull the 2 outside ones. On past conditions, I was just thinking about this. Okay. We can simply make this an alternate way. Could not connect to that. Okay. Yeah, that's just going to connect it up another way. It's an input, but it has conditions to it. One moment, I'm thinking about something. Okay. So, when we clicked on our gate before, it was, we could see the switches that were connected to it. So these logic blocks are purely external. I haven't investigated to this depth, so this is interesting to me. So these would always open or close whatever it is that they're calling on their past and failed conditions. But we can continue to add things as we had before, which might get pretty jumbled, but we really don't need to do that. Also, our switches over here, this little logic node, did not incorporate those notifications, so bear that in mind. What? Did I have it? Huh. Oh, duh. Okay, so it is just those 2. If I were to pull both of them, they would both close. Sorry, I forgot my own thing there. There we are. And then this one needs to be false. Okay, there we go. Next on the list, notifications, randomize. I did not use randomize in my things, but it's pretty self-evident. So you can either pick a random thing in a list, or all of these things that it could possibly do. Spawn 3 enemies, or 2 enemies, or, you know, show something visible, turn on a light, move something around, pick something random to do, and do it randomly. Or I could have it have no repeats, so I guess you'd have a limited list after a bit, but, you know, there you go. And you can set a delay. You can set delays on logic blocks as well. And then also anytime you connect to another logic block, because you can, it's a lot of fun, and there's a delay between logic blocks. So we won't get into randomization as much, but explore that. That could be fun. Camera shake, this is just like, not events, like effects to call from code. So like a block like this could say shake the camera and say open sesame, or, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. You have to play test it to see. Unfortunately, you don't get a preview in the editor. And then as well, sound effects clips. These are interesting. Some of them are a little cheesy, like seriously. Oh, that one's not so bad. You can decide if it's a global sound or if the player can hear it within a certain area. So, anyway, the visual effects and time of day, you can update these. So you have like rain, snow, leaves, etc. And this would be like outside of your default setting. So if you start at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. And it's not raining, and then you want to change the time of day to something, you could have it say rain about that much and go forward to 7 o'clock and it would start raining, or whatever it is you want to do. And you'd have to call that in code. So after the player exits this house, this trigger is enabled, and then when they pass through that trigger, once this visual effect will be called, something like that. What else? Okay. Oh, NPCs can call code as well, and they're free. They don't cost nothing. I can have anything. And NPCs is a loose term, by the way. So NPC, like this one, NPC is actual people. So let's look at these with the time and respect they deserve. Here's an NPC. This is the default guy. He is a traveler, but I can change that by, just clicking this button. And they have different animations. So first of all, this is all underneath the friendly category for NPC. We can also speak to our enemies. These NPCs do not attack you. They don't help you fight. They just stand there. And, say text and call code. But it's still pretty fun. So they also all have animations. So they have a scared animation, an angry animation, sad animation, sweeping, guarding, which they have this little pike, working, which is like digging on the ground, I guess, or cleaning something, and the default is just standing. These menus cannot be moved and they're a little annoying sometimes. But you could, pick an animation and then scroll through, pick a character and then scroll through. That's kind of funny, actually. Yeah. So, and then they also have this icon. You can have them show an exclamation point. You could have them have a question mark, an asterisk, or none. And that icon will go away after you speak with them once, and there's nothing you can do to get it back. So that's a little unfortunate, but just design around it. Know that it's a function. Use it if you like it. It's a lot of fun. And then on finished dialogue, you could call an action. So we'll say on finished dialogue, we will open this gate. Okay? That's it. But first, we gotta talk to him. So we could say hello, and we'll have another. My name is Rumpelstiltskin, and the third thing is gonna be I shouldn't have told you that, because you're supposed to guess his name, and he was being careless, whatever. So anyway, we could talk to Rumpel and hit play test. There's this closed. We say hello. Hello. My name is Rumpelstiltskin. I told you that. And on the finish, so even like while this last thing is playing, this opens up. So there you have it. Why did it be sad? Anyway, back to the editor. I'm gonna save. Control S. NPCs. We were in NPCs already. So, you get the point with these guys. Now, you also have signposts. Signposts don't really do anything. They just have, characters. Say something happens. Or not even something happened, that sounds too codey. Something is. There. And then, a lectern is pretty much the same thing. It's a book thing, except it can call code. And this, I think, is quite cool. I'm gonna use this for some more examples, so let's place this NPC. Also, by the way, you cannot move items in this editor. I don't know if you've noticed, but this whole time, if I'd moved something, I would delete it and then recreate it. Like, I cannot click on him and drag him anywhere. I already have his text set up, I have him calling code, but if I want him to stand one block over, I have to recreate him entirely. So do this as a last step and be very certain and aware of your space. Be spatially aware. Because that is not fun, especially if you have like a lot of things connecting with each other. For that reason, I like to have, especially if I know that I'm going to be moving things around, I like to use logic blocks, which is the one thing I haven't covered yet, so I'll come back to that in just a second. Actually, yeah, I'm going to show you the logic block now. So here's a logic block, okay? It has this all inputs to fire, or you could have any input to fire. So similar to the gate that could have all on, any on, or all off. This one is just any input or all inputs, and this is the cause of many bugs because the default is all inputs to fire. So you could get something all hooked up and it's working properly, and then you're like, you know what? I want this to happen with another thing. So you recreate this over here and just call the same code because don't repeat yourself, you know. And all of a sudden it's not working. Well, that was the issue. That's it. Any input to fire as opposed to all inputs to fire. Save yourself some headache and like write that down and stick it to your monitor or something, because it can definitely be hard to spot. So, on fired, we're gonna say open this gate, and we're also going to say this open sesame. Okay. So now anything that calls this logic block, that will occur, and I could have many objects doing that. So say I don't like this guy standing here. Okay, so I have to go NPC, NPC, and delete him. I could have somebody over here, and somebody over here, somebody over here. Okay, and they could all call this block and they can do all kinds of things with logic blocks, by the way. So let me show you this guy. Find item in scene. Here's our logic block. We can trigger a logic block, we can disable a logic block, we can enable it, or we could even reset it. So this is very interesting. So if I had a logic block that contained fire once lines in it, then if I reset it, those lines would fire again when that block is triggered. So if I'm resetting it, I'm not triggering it per se. I could trigger it and then I could reset it right away. Could I? Perhaps not. No, could not. Only one. So that's another thing. You can reference an item once through code with the same input. But I could have like another logic block that could handle that. I had a lot of pink strings before, and then I cut down on the size a bit. Just practice with it, have fun with it. What am I doing? Event picker mode. Okay, get rid of that. I could also disable it. So, ooh. Alright. Let's do this. We're going to disable it with the middle guy. And we're going to... Not you. I know. Go away. Enable it with guy on the left. And we better give him some text that says enabled. And he's gonna say disabled. And he's going to say triggered because that's what he is doing. Yes, okay, cool. This logic block is just going to open the thing, and it's also going to call a notification. So even once the gate is already open, we'll still be able to see per the notification. So we'll go ahead and playtest. We don't want to trigger it right away because it starts enabled. Okay, we didn't disable it on the start of the game. He will disable it. Well, actually, I should just show you. So, first of all, it's enabled right now. We haven't talked to anybody. He's going to trigger it. So he's going to trigger that logic block. Okay, now it's set. I want that to close. There we go. Okay, if I trigger him again, it says open sesame again. Okay, that's because the logic block that he's calling is enabled. But now we're going to go ahead and talk to the disabler. And he says disabled. Okay, so now that logic block is disabled, and all of a sudden we can talk to this guy all day long, and that's not going to happen. We can talk to the disabled guy all day long, and he's not going to re-enable anything. We have to talk to the enabler, and the enabler says enabled, and then we go and talk to the triggered guy. This is starting to sound like a therapy session, and he will open the door for us, and then he could disable it, and that's not going to do anything. I mean, the thing will be disabled, of course, so we could come back, talk to this guy, and nothing is happening because this thing is disabled. We have to re-enable it. This is great to use when you don't want something to occur until like all enemies are dead, but you want it to call or constantly check each time the player is performing some other kind of action like down the road. So to be a little bit more specific about this kind of stuff, let's go adventures. We shall load this one. Okay. One specific example. There is a logic block here that calls other logic blocks. Does it? Yes, no. What do you do? Let me check. Logic block. Hides the priest. So, yes, that's not the example I'm looking for. These guys, what do you do? Change the visual effects. Yes. Okay, so here I have a logic block that it changes the visual effects to be 2 hours later, so it's a little bit more sunny, and it changes the effects to have these god rays that shine through, and it looks like, you know, when it just like the sunny rains. It's pretty cool. Anyway, changes the sunsetting, the time of day, and calls god rays. But I want this to happen not as soon as the player kills all of these guys. I want it to happen as soon as they pop their head up out of the trapdoor right here. So they come up, and I want the sun to be shining brighter, and I want all those god rays there as soon as they come out of the roof of the church. But this logic block gets called by this ladder. Okay, so ladder is similar to like the gate that could have a call code on opened or whatever. It's constantly calling this each time the player uses the ladder. So if they were to come down here, take one look at these two people, because you can't see these guys, and be like, nope, checking out, and they just go back up the ladder, it's not going to show god rays and a sunnier day. Also, all of these other people that are in my level are still going to be like freaking out, and you know, you don't do that until all of these guys are killed, at which point there are no enemies left in the scene, and then this, among several other logic blocks, get enabled, and then they get called when the player climbs the ladder. So I know for a fact what the player has done and even though I'm calling it each time, it's not enabled, so it doesn't happen. It doesn't get enabled until this very specific event, and then this other event that I want to actually control the time that the logic gets fired, as opposed to right away. So it's great for having enabling and disabling things all hooked up in there. That might have been confusing. I'm not opposed to questions. You can always leave them in the comments or email me. That's totally cool. Back to the tutorial, though. So we shall load the tutorial. Okay. So you've gotten a taste for logic blocks. We talked about all of those things. I promised that we would go back to the interactive objects, as well as spawners and effects in chests. So, interactive it is then. We talked about switches and pressure plates. Alright, doors. Let's go to a new spot. So, just grab some land really quick. Okay. And I'm going to make us a little area. Okay. Oops, I missed one. Okay. Here we are. We shall... Maybe that's a little bit narrow in there. Okay. And I grabbed an extra one. It happens. Trying to think on why I... Okay. Pretty good. And then we're gonna need... We'll get there to that bridge when we get there. I'm gonna move my spawner. So entities spawn over here. So here's our new little demo area. We're gonna talk about some doors and gates and things. Let's grab, so escape props interactive, tab, door. Here is a single wooden door, and as you can tell, there's all kinds of different things. What's important to take into consideration when picking one is how far across it's going to be, because you're probably going to be shaping up your terrain and everything around that. So here's just a single door. Okay, actually set it right there. And it's just sitting there on top of everything, and that's because it belongs to that block. You can tell it is right there in the middle. So if I click on this block, actually if I hold shift and click on this block, it will go all the way down to the floor, and I will be able to use that door just automatically. So go ahead and play test and show you. There it is, just kind of stuck in the wall there, which is nice for rooms. I actually do not prefer those kinds of doors. I like teleporting things. But we'll get there. So, props interactive tab. Here's a single metal door. So if I were to... Oh, I thought that was a bigger door than it was. How about this one? There we go. Single metal door. It's not locked or anything. We could click on it and say it was locked. We could require a key. But let's start simple. So that's just a larger door. Playtest. We approach and it just automatically opens for us. No problem, no questions asked. Same as this little simple door. Now, with either one of these, we could require some keys. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say that this guy, so props interactive, click on this guy. Do not click on that permanently locks the door like for the entire game, which is a little bogus. There's not a way to unlock it. I've tried. There you go. And now we have this key. So red key, blue key, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. We will have a green key for that. And let's hover over this door and require a gold key. No, we'll go silver. This looks very Slytherin-y. Okay. So, you can spawn keys in a lot of different ways. To prove my point, I'm going to make another door, and I'm going to say you need a red key. Okay. So, all of our doors are set up. Now we need keys. That should probably be the very next thing you do, so you don't forget about it. So, props, interactive, tab, key. This is the simplest way. You just literally drop a key into the room. Let's put this in the corner. Okay. And that will let us through. The other way is to go chests, which we haven't really gotten into, but they're pretty simple. Tab to view the selections that we have, and silver chest. So this chest will have a silver key in it, and that will let us in. Okay. Third way is to have an NPC or some other kind of code. It doesn't have to be an NPC. I'm gonna make 2 points. So let's have this guy, make him look cool, and say, here's the red key. Goodness, if I could type today. Here's the red key. Have a nice day. And we're going to go props, interactive, tab, key, a red one, right there. Okay, now here's the cool thing. Okay, go back to your NPC, click on him, unfinished dialogue, find object and scene, click that key, we will spawn it. And that whole spawn once does not apply. If you take the key, you have the key. He will not continue to spawn keys, even if fires once is not selected, as you can see. So if I could like hit fires once, you would see it says once. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to prove a point and just have it be as normal. Okay? So that's one way. I also like invisible NPCs, which we didn't really talk about a whole lot, but if at all. Nope, we completely skipped that, but we'll get back there. Props, interactive, tab, door, metal, thank you, rotate with an E key, and this one shall require a blue key, and this is gonna be cool. Okay, so, check this out. We're gonna do some invisible NPC stuff. I'm going to grab my NPC, invisible. Well, no, I want to set the scene here. So, my goodness. Let me just drop a blue key in the scene really quick. Okay, interactive tab, key, blue. So I'll set it there. Now, I'm going to be using an invisible NPC to spawn this key in, and it's going to look exactly the same as this old man over here in terms of the way that it works, but there's going to be nobody there. So here's my invisible NPC, and I can rotate it, okay? So I like to have it positioned kind of towards an object, because if this is invisible, which it is, let me just pop in here and show you what this looks like, okay? There's literally nothing here, but if you approach, it will say investigate. Oh, actually it won't unless you have text attached to it. We'll get there. This guy says talk to, okay? He says here's the red key, and he already spawned in the thing. If we grab this key, okay, we have the key, and now this door will open to us, and that icon above the door goes away. We could still talk to him, and like I'd said, he's not going to spawn in any more red keys. We already have it. If you're curious as to which keys you have, if you're playing the game, down here, bottom bar, Anyway, green key is just floating in the air. I can pick it up, come through here. This door requires a silver key. It's in a chest that I placed. Okay, and then I can pick it up, and I can get through there now. But my favorite thing over there, we're not going to grab that blue key. We have this NPC to deal with. I like to give players something to focus on. So let's start by showing you what that looks like without focus. Edit. I'm going to say invisible keys. Doesn't make any sense, but fine. You know. Let's play test. Come in here. Now it should. Oh, we're still getting our not a clue from the other tutorial part over there. Anyway, ignore that. It says investigate now, and if we hit F, it just says invisible keys. It looks like you're talking to somebody, you know, just like a speech bubble pops up. But what I like to do is put an object there for the player to focus on as if it's special. So, I could go to props, tab, static. Here's a blue crystal, and instead of that, now we have some context, and we need to hook this up. So we have our invisible NPC, and on finished dialogue, we'd want to spawn in this key, same as like what we did with the red key. Okay, play test. Okay, so we have people who give us keys. Lovely. We have keys that float and draw the player's attention directly to them because they know it's there. We have chests, which are known for containing keys. And then we have this. Investigate it. Ooh, what's this? And you have this key, and then you can get through, and it is really fun. So that is, as you can tell, my favorite thing to do. Okay, so that's doors and keys. Now, we already talked about gates, which use logic to unlock them, which we did. Pressure switches and everything. Interactive things. That was the gate with the... That's a gate. Door, gate, okay. Keys we talked about, movable things, sliding. Okay. The sliding thing is another favorite thing of mine. So let's come over here. Going to grab my entities spawn, place this in here for now. Also, by the way, with your spawn, you can use your arrow keys to change the direction the player faces, and if you hold shift and change the arrow keys, it changes the way that the camera is rotated. And if you forget about that, it says so right at the bottom of the screen, right down there when you hover over the spawn. Anyway, the sliding items. Interactive, tab, sliding. Okay, this is some Scooby-Doo stuff going on here. Also, make sure this is still going. Yes, it is. Very good. Anyway, here we have a clock. Just an ordinary clock. I don't like that it automatically goes to the very top of these tiles, but you can hit the down arrow and set it on the floor and nobody's the wiser. So, it is going to slide over and destroy, well, not destroy, it's going to deactivate this tile right there so we can pass through. It's a secret passageway and it is cool. It also uses logic, so you can really do whatever you like to trigger this event. I could use a simple switch. So if I went to, switch, I could go with like a lever and move that down so I can actually grab it. And I could connect it to that. And that would be all we would need. So just play test it. Go over, it moves, we can pass through, which is cool. And that automatically moves it back and restores the thing. So that's, pretty basic. you could use another logic block where we could handle multiple, you know, inputs. So maybe 2 switches, 3 switches, or 2 switches in a plate or something. What I like to do also is to investigate and call the function from a invisible NPC, because to me it feels spookier and more like surprisey. So let us go props, interactive, get rid of that switch, and we want, oh, let's not do the invisible NPC, even though you totally could, but like same concept, call something on end of conversation and make it slide. I want a different NPC. I would like this lectern to like do some cool stuff. So lecterns can call code. On finished dialogue, I would like you to open. Okay. And we need some text like abracadabra. Abracadabra. Like the song. Okay. And then we come over here, hit play test. And yes, we know. Okay. Read the book. Abracadabra, and then it opens and it's awesome. So they're less expecting this to happen. It is cooler, okay? It doesn't work like a switch, so you can't come over here and read the book again and make it go back unless you were to, let's grab this. Oh no, yeah, no. You can only open it. You could have some other kind of condition to close it, however. So, for example, if I had a trigger box, place it directly behind there. And we're gonna say, make it about there. And when the player exits this time, okay, just to get something else, we're gonna close it. So maybe they've gone through, but now they're too far away to run back in time, and that passageway is going to be closed to them for, you know, whatever reason. It's a haunted castle. Have some fun with it. Over here, read the book, abracadabra, it opens, and then we're in the trigger, but on trigger exit, it shall close. And there's nothing we can do, and then we're trapped in here. Actually, we actually are trapped because we can't get back through that way. So yeah, be aware of that as well. Don't trap the player in places if you're going to be doing this stuff. They need to be able to get around and not be stuck. Right. What was the other thing I wanted to show you? We covered sliding things. I do, while we're on the topic, want to show you where I used that in a game level was the mountain. Okay. Okay. I can move the spawn point and it will maintain its code, which I really wish that all the objects could do that, but alas, they can't. Okay, so I'm gonna just move my spawn point and show you what I've done here. So, here it's not a bookcase. I mean, it's not a clock, it's a bookcase. But, and let's also just switch to sculpt so that thing goes away. I have 2 invisible NPCs, one that is active, so you can set NPCs active or inactive as well, just like that triggered, enabled, and disabled little exercise that we did. Here I have NPCs enabled and disabled. So while this NPC is enabled, this one is disabled. This one is disabled on start, actually. And then when the player investigates, or, or discusses, has a conversation with this invisible NPC, it opens, and then it also enables the other NPC, and it calls a piece of code, because things can't connect to themselves, but they can connect to a logic block, and the logic block can connect to the item that connected to it. So it's like a circular reasoning kind of a thing, and it works splendidly. So just to show you that in action, so it makes more sense. Shall play test. Come over here. Okay, here's our sneaky bookcase. Investigate, hit F. This book looks even more suspicious than the others. And it moves over at the end of that conversation. This NPC disappears. Well, it's not disappearing, it's set to inactive. This one is enabled, which was previously inactive. So we are able to close it. So if I hit investigate, let's just slide this back over. Okay, and I could continue. So they just kind of alternate back and forth, and that's done with two logic blocks. So just to show you while we're here, logic block. So this one will hide this NPC, and it will show that NPC. That's its job. And this one will do the exact opposite. It will show this one and hide that one. So each NPC calls its appropriate logic block to make that magic happen. And then these are some particle effects I have flying around just to kind of draw the player's attention to, like, ooh, secret sparkly things. So back to the other thing. Adventures load. Tutorial. Where were we? Interactive props, the best thing in the whole game. Okay, doors, gates, keys, movable sliding switch, teleporters! Okay, we kind of touched on this a bit with, what we were doing before with jumping back and forth, between those things when I'm showing off the blockers, but never fear, we have other ways of teleporting. So, we could perhaps do like this teleport move, and we could place one here and one in here. So maybe this whole room is like blocked off. You don't even have a door or a gate or anything, but you do have this magic teleporter. They do have to be the same shape, by the way. One's a move and one's a fade, and they don't get along well. So make sure you have two teleporters. You can only have two. You can't have like three and expect them to connect, I do believe. Yeah, no. You can't have, there's no way to add a connection. So you're not even going to get an error because you're not going to get that far. You're just going to make a connection. And if you pick a different connection, it will just switch to that new one. It won't keep it. So, good to know. You could have multiple teleporters, but they're kind of big, and I think they're expensive too. Yeah, they're a 10 build cost. So, anywho, we're gonna go ahead and connect these two. I clicked on my teleporter, hit connection button, and then click the teleporter. Okay, and then you can decide if everybody can use it, if only the enemies get to use it, or if only the player gets to use it. I usually keep things set to the player. I just think that's more fair. I don't want enemies chasing them all over the map if they're trying to escape through a teleporter, unless you want that to happen, but you know, whatever. You can also pick if it's bi-directional, so I can come here and just ping pong back and forth, or not. I could only receive from here, or only send. So if I did only send, I would be trapped over here because I have no other exit. But keeping things going in two directions is, I think, better. Because if they forgot something they needed over here as well, then they would have no way of getting back if you like blocked them in there. So just keep it in mind. You know, it's a thing. You can do it. Don't not do it, but think about it a little bit. Anyway, what was I gonna do? You can also call code whenever you use this teleporter. So the same thing we've been doing. It's just another opportunity to change things about the game. Let's move our spawn point back. Spawn. Where are you? Entities, spawn. Okay. Play test. Here's the red key. And I will grab it. interact with this, and I can go over here, do whatever I need to do, and then come back. And that's the same thing for doors. I mean, like, everything is essentially that. It's just a different skin in the teleporting section. So, props, interactive, tab, teleporter, upstairs, downstairs, ladders. Some of them have weird collision and stuff. Actually, I had an issue. So, like, this ladder belongs to this red block, okay? Which means, if I, like, click it there, it's just kind of floating there. And, you know, if I put it up against this wall, it's going to clip, and if the player interacts with it, they could potentially die. Because that's what happened to me with the other level I was building, and I had to move it away from the wall. Or I could still set it there on that square if I really needed to, for the sake of space, but I would have to rotate it in such a way that it didn't clip with the wall. So I could set it there and be perfectly fine, or there, but it can't be overlapping. Like, you can start the game like that, but when you try and use it, you may or may not die, so, you know, do so at your own risk. Yeah, so you have moving teleporters, fade teleporters, teleporter trapdoor, which you saw on the top of the church, upstairs and downstairs, ladders up and down, and then like an actual door. So if I could like set that there. One thing to note is that like these doors are very different than these pass-through doors. I think this looks much better, and when you walk through there, it feels better to me not to be able to see the rest of the entire building from within a room. So I like to section things off. That's just me. Anyway, so you can enter, and you need to obviously have another teleporter door to receive it. And these doors do not adhere to, you know, the middle of the wall, but the outside. But it's not even like the top up there. It's the exterior square. So this tile is still free to, you know, accept whatever you want to put on it. It's very interesting. Next thing, traps. I don't think yes I did. I did put traps in my game, in only one spot though. But they're interesting. They trigger automatically by default, but you can change that in code. You know, poison darts shooting out of the wall. You do have to rotate them and make sure they're on the correct side. And then I wouldn't be able to place anything on the opposite side of the wall, like I said. You have a wall spear, which will shoot out. And then metal spikes on the ground, all kinds of death traps. Metal door. Wooden trapdoor, which is the same thing, it's just, you know, aesthetics. Spinning blades. Poison gas plates, fire plates. And all of these you can turn them on, turn them off, or even toggle them on and off. So if you wanted to, like, there's no way they're getting through there without taking damage or dying completely, because these will open up into the abyss. They could have like a switch or an invisible NPC or something else to start turning these things on and off and have that be kind of a puzzle. Space it out and make it cooler, but you know, that would be a concept. Traversable things are easy. That's just ladders, and they're cool because they automatically update to the size of your wherever you're going, you know. So here's one on them. As you can see, this is taller than that one, but it just automatically goes there. And if I play test it, I can come over here and just grab the ladder. Oops. Okay, and climb up. And that's very easy peasy. And pleasure. Death. And that. Okay. We didn't talk about checkpoints. So if you were to checkpoints they need a 3x3 space to place them, which is a little annoying, but that's okay. When the player hits a checkpoint, you can I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. When they're on a checkpoint, they get an extra life, and they also gain 150 XP to use at their own discretion. So it's not like they can carry it around with them. They have to be standing on the checkpoint in order to absorb that HP. You can also do other things. Like, if I check the checkpoint, okay, I go do my business, and I come over here, and then I die. I could call certain code on respawn. Maybe I want, something to change when I die. And then if I walk over it, I automatically get a life. So you could say, when the player walks over this, so it acts kind of like an on-trigger enter. It's actually exactly like an on-trigger enter, but no, it's not, because it would be like an on-trigger enter with a fire once for every single item, because you only are ever awarded 1 life for each checkpoint as a instance in the game. So if I walk over it, I collect that life, that's it. I can't keep walking over it and collecting lives. So maybe I want to play a sound effect, or change the time of day because they hit this item or something. Whatever it is that you want to do. Totally cool. Also noting that they drop your level difficulty. So previously, this probably said, oh no, it still said medium. But you have this calculation over here that tells you how difficult your level is, and therefore also how good the loot is going to be when the player eventually collects the loot at the end for the treasure chest. Which brings me to my next section. And by the way, this not a clue notification is driving me just a little bit batty. So I'm going to delete it, and it's going to break all of our lines of code. Well, that called it anyway, which is fine. They just delete themselves. Where am I? Props? No. Logic, notifications, be gone. Thank you very much. Okay. Right. The chests and the enemies. No, we did chests. Enemies. Okay. We can use this area for enemies. That would be fine. Entities. Enemies now. Okay. There are melee, mini-boss, and ranged. So within those, there are also subcategories that you can do. So let's say we put some rats in here. Okay. All of these rats are going to look exactly the same, except you can change that from visual. You can make this one massive, and make it purple. And you could make these ones tiny, 80%. So there's a 50% swing between your smallest rat and your biggest rat, which really shows it more, it's a juxtaposition. And we'll make a 90% pink rat, and this one will be we'll make one regular black rat. Okay. And then also, if you have an enemy, you can decide if they are normal, okay, or harder, at which point your visuals are overridden, so don't set your hard on that when you start modifying easy or normal. Because harder, I think they get a red stripe down their back, and easy, I don't know what easy is. And then this prioritized and suppressed, I believe, is their likelihood for randomly getting a modification, which is another thing that you cannot control. So they would gain an elemental power of some kind. I've had enemies gain lightning and silence. What else have they gained? I think those are the top 2 that I've seen. But it's random and a little bit annoying because you can't design around it. And any enemy can get it. I think it's more likely that enemies with a hard difficulty level will get a modification. But prioritized means that they're more likely, and suppressed means that they're less likely to gain a mod. So if I had like, you know, some massive thing, I'm like, if this thing gets lightning, you know, the player is not gonna have any luck anymore, and so I might want to suppress that. And I can suppress a maximum of 5 enemies, and I can prioritize a max of 5 enemies. Oh, mutators is what they call them, not modifications, whatever. Anyway, and so rats are under the melee section. You also have ranged, like some spike slugs, and I think normal slugs are in the melee. Yeah, all kinds of good stuff in here. Let's see, does slugs have any cool visual? No, just the size of them. Orcs? Orcs, you can pick a tint. Unfortunately, you really can't preview it, like you just get this little swatch. You can't see them in the editor. These are little billboards that rotate with the camera. And then they spawn in enemies when you play. Here's my green key, and my silver key, and I can come in here. There's my difficult one, is the one with the red stripe on him. Hey. If I come over here, remember, they can't use the teleporter. So that's one way for them to escape. Apparently they don't get hurt by traps either. And you can see the difference in the size of the rats. Like, look at this little tiny guy versus that massive one, and that smaller brown one. Can I talk to you through the wall? How bizarre. Didn't know that was a thing. Okay. So, code around that, unless you want that to be a thing, where you can talk to you through the wall. That's not a very obvious thing, so maybe don't do that. Okay, back to the editor. Enemies will spawn in automatically by default if you don't do anything about that. So if I had, for example, a trigger box. So let's, like I said, triggers are great for testing. On event, trigger enter, then we'll spawn all these enemies once they're surrounded. We can hit spawn. We can also change what the enemy is doing, if they're attacking or defending. And there's other things that you can do with these enemies. You can make them patrol. You can, and within the patrol, you can make them loop, or you can make them ping pong, back and forth. You can make them defend an area. You can affect their attack radius. So let's see. Real quick, you could, it's under behavior, so this is their like awake radius when they actually realize that you're there. He could attack, or he could defend his radius. Okay, so if he's attacking, like you watch them chase me out the door and down the hallway, if it was a defense radius, then he would simply stay within his perimeter, and as soon as I left, he would walk back to his original spot. Patrolling, I could like modify patrol and set some patrol points for him. You gotta be careful with this, because if enemies run into each other, they tend to just like stare each other in the face and not move. So try not to let them intersect at any point. But yeah. And he would patrol that, and his patrol right, and then control click to get back, or excuse me, shift click to get back. This is ping pong, so he would come around, and then when he got here, he would go back the other way, and he would do that. But if I set it to loop, then he would continuously go in a circle. So consider that. Ping pong is also like, you know, if I had 2 control points, so he had one here and one here, he would just pace. Something to consider. Wander is what it sounds like. You wander the map. So we have this trigger box that's going to spawn in our enemies. For us, we attached all of them to spawn when the player enters this. So logic, triggers, just want to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. And we shall play test it. Get our key. Okay. Note we have no enemies. Okay. Not until we enter that trigger. And then all of a sudden, there they are. Okay. So, what else? We talked about enemies. Those guys. Oh, another thing about enemies is you can call code from them, which is awesome. So, entities, enemies, clicky. Actions. You can make them drop a key. So if I were to kill that rat, he would spawn a red key at his death location, same as that guy spawning the key in at that key location. He would drop a key. You can obviously pick the color. And then as well as if they're dropping loot, potions, or nothing, or both. And then when the rat is killed, you could run some actions, you know, code. Or if they are below 50%, you could run code as well. You can also name them if you want. Like this one could be Captain Rat, I don't know. And his name is Tartar because it's like rat backwards, I don't know. But those will pop up underneath. So if you've like built up a story around an enemy and you want to give them a name, and then the player can like put a face to the name and it's cool, you know, like they've heard all about this guy, he's a rat, and I don't know, whatever, have fun with it. Let's see, I think we've covered everything in this editor. No, we didn't. We have to go over water and all of that stuff. So, another safe space over here. Land. Thank you very much. Let's pick a different texture. Like, you know, grass. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't cover that part. Okay, so clearly I have hit the Q or the E key when I wasn't paying attention. And when you are sculpting, you get a little preview of the block that you're gonna make. And so here I have a half block. I could grab a quarter, or I could grab a full block, and it would, you know, do that. But if I hit the Q key, it'll bring it all the way down, and if I hit E, it will automatically go up in the increments of the unit that I've selected. So we're going up by a half each time. Q key, come down, you know. So it's just one more time saver. So I don't have to go up and click those each time, or if I wanted these things to be a set unit, I recommend not doing that with the full blocks, just because otherwise just climbing constantly, but you know, whatever. So anyway, we were gonna look at the alternative land thing. So we have blue. Blue is water. So if I were to lay out, say, 4 pieces right there, grab our spawn point, and rotate this. Okay. Playtest. You'll notice that it does actually progressively get a little bit darker as you venture down, and it gets deeper as well. Dark blue is just simply darker shade of water. You know, this might be fresh water, maybe the other one is salt water, whatever you want to play with it. Design dark blue. It's also important to note that water is not treated as land. Okay? So it still has a 1 build cost, as you can see. But you have to go to that unique section to get it. And if we play test, you can see here it's getting deeper, and then deeper still. The depth is determined by the space between the edge of the map. So if you had like another piece of land over there, this would actually be shallower. But yeah, this is the dark blue water. And then we have light blue leading into dark blue. So do with that what you will. And then we also have brown water, which I suppose you could use. I'm gonna delete that. Actually, I probably shouldn't delete that one. I'll delete the other one. Let go. Stop it. Something is stuck here. Okay. There. Here's some brown water. And that works exactly the same way, it's just brown. So you get an idea for that. And then swamp is green. Works the same way. Looks a little grosser. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. And then we also have our other special terrain, lava, where you like catch fire. And we also have mud, which I haven't figured out why mud is so bad. I suppose I'll find out. And then poison. And painting is the tool we use to change textures. So let's go ahead and play test this. Okay, here's our brown water. Oops, I fell off the map. Okay, lava, you catch fire. Okay, take continuous damage. Swamp is just water as well. Let's see, mud. See, I haven't figured out why mud is so bad. Oh, I guess it just kind of slows you down. I keep jumping off of it because it's a little bit lower than my... Yeah, a little. And then poison, of course, hurts you. And the swamp is, like we had said, just like water. Alright, now I think we've done everything. We've gone through design, we've gone through props, all the interactive things. Yes. We've gone through props, destructible chests, static, bridges, steps, decals, spawners. We didn't do that. Okay. They spawn enemies, and you have to destroy the spawner to stop the enemies from coming out. So I just have this tomb in here. And click on it. It says every 4 seconds for a maximum of 4 enemies. We're gonna do a mummy and another mummy or scarab. Okay, that are normal. So like we said with the enemies, you have easy, normal, and hard. We could have any like mixture. And then if we want things to happen when it's killed, then we could do that as well. So we can play test this. Okay, we have a mummy. And it will continue until I defeat the spawner. As you can tell, the spawner has its own health, and it takes damage and blinks. So it's pretty cool. Also a great way to get more enemies into your level without having a higher cost. So if you look at the spawner props, where are you at? Spawners. Okay. Tab. So a spawner only costs 5 build points. Okay. A enemy NPC, oh excuse me, enemies up here. Enemies are expensive, actually. So the build points aren't shown, but I believe they're 15 points a piece. So let's test that. We're at 2251. So to 2266. That's 15 points, okay? So from as lowly as a rat to as high up as a mini boss, like this giant worm. Let's see. 86, or 66 to 81 is also 15, is it not? Yes, it is. So any enemy is 15 points. And here you have the spawner spawning them in, and the whole thing only costs 5, so it's a third of an enemy. The downside is, of course, you can't control when the player destroys the spawner. You know, and it will only increment your loot by so much. But if you have an area that really needs some enemies and you only have 5 build points, it's also a lot of fun, you know, to balance all of that as a player. And do you attack the enemies of the spawner and everything? They're fun. Props, interactive. Where did I find that? Where did I just... Oh, okay, they got this special section, props, spawners. Okay, last thing, I think, is effects. And these are easy. They're just kind of like decals, except cooler. They toggle on and off. They're on by default. You can turn them off on game start, etc. But here's like some particles. The only thing about these is that they're really hard to find again, so you have to like mouse around and find this exact square that they are on. Because all of these particles are the property of this square. So if I delete it, then that goes away. But I could like put in a bunch of them and fireflies or something, you know. It's cool. Yeah, you get fire with smoke, you know, other things. I used, what did I use? For big, for small, smoke. Fog. I put fog over the water in the other game that I made, so that was pretty cool. I don't know, I like particles. And what else? We talked about entities. You can only have one finish point, spawn point. As you can tell, as I move the spawn point around, it moves with me. Finish point is the same way. Checkpoints, you can have any number of those, but be careful because it makes your game a lot easier. Or it should anyway. Yeah. There it is. Okay. Plus they get an extra life with each one, so they're kind of a high-ticket item. Logic, we definitely talked about. NPCs, signposts, lecterns, etc. Visual effects. Okay, so this visual effects is where you set the default for your level. So if I wanted this to be a night level, I could go ahead and make it so. I like to keep it daytime and then like switch it to night when I'm ready to finally play it, just so you can see what's going on. You can also set this to a fixed time, or you could like make it update over the course of the level. So to show you what that looks like, if I made time really rapidly change, let's playtest that really quick. Playtest. Chase these shadows away. I can escape over here. Kind of. I wonder what would happen to him. I need to find some shadows to watch. Watch these shadows on the sarcophagus if I don't kill it. Oh wow. Okay, so that we're seeing. Should start getting dark soon. I hope. It is. that's how you can affect the day and night cycle in your environments. Music we covered, playtest. Oh, that's not a thing. Dashboard pulls up, published things, etc. And yeah, that's pretty much everything that you can do in this level editor. And just to, yeah, one more really quick thing. When I'm just gonna open it, I'm not gonna recreate it right now. Let's save our tutorial. To give you an idea of one thing that you could do is to load, well, not to load, you can change things that happen in the day and the night. Yeah. So, come down here. I have this day-night cycle. And it is focused on invisible NPCs that use static props to focus the player's attention. So the player could come up here and investigate, and then it's going to call code. And so all of these pink strings have a lot to do with story, and these ones specifically have to do with determining combinations. That's why there's so many of them, because there's not a, when 2 of these conditions in a list of 5 are met kind of a thing, then you have to go through it and figure out how many combinations of 2 you can have within a list of 5, and then code for each one, which was not the most enjoyable part of that, but I really liked the effect of getting it all put in there at the end, so it was definitely worth the work. Anyway, my point is ignore that pink stuff right now. And when the player investigates this, it changes the day, or it changes the day, changes to day, changes the visual effects, time of day, and then over here they would investigate it and it would change the time of day. But what it actually does is it calls this one block of code which controls the things that happen during the day, and then it branches from there. And then over here it calls this block of code which controls the things that happen at night and branches from there. And it does things like turn the lights off at night, or on at night, off during the day. The ghosts come alive at night, and they're off during the day, because you can disable an entire NPC. What else do we do during the day and night? These guys are only present at night, a specific night, because there's 2 nights in this level. So that has to do with enabling and disabling code blocks, like we did with our disable, enable, and trigger. These guys only occur after a certain event at night. Same thing with these guys. So that's just an idea of where you can go, what you can do with that. And yeah, the things in this editor are you can really mix and match and create your own stuff. It's awesome. So I hope that you found this tutorial informative, if not a little bit random, so I apologize for any off tangents and things, but I hope you make really cool levels. So if you do, drop a video so I can see what you made. Thank you very much. Bye.